thinking about my own experience, both as a parent, but stepping aside and really looking sociologically more at my experience talking for the last 10 years with other parents, specifically straight parents, straight people, the PTA, literally. Talk to them a lot and listen to what it is they're struggling with and what is holding them back on the issue of their kids and marijuana use. And I think I have been just overwhelmed with the level of fear that parents have today about their kids. In general, they are fearful that their kids are not going to make it, and they were fearful before 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, imagine how they are now. That their kids are going to fall through the cracks somehow, that they are not going to get into the next school they're applying for, get the next job. They're just terrified, and their fear has really been whooped up by the federal government, as you know. And they're listening, and they have no way of sorting out the information that they're hearing. So, and what are they afraid of specifically around marijuana? They are afraid that their kids are going to get addicted to marijuana, and that in that way they'll fall through the cracks. They'll have a drug problem. If they use marijuana, they will go on to use harder drugs. But even marijuana itself, as you know, the drug czar is touting as an addiction in and of itself. So whether or not they use anything other than marijuana, they're fearful of marijuana. They're fearful of lung cancer. They don't know about Tashkin's latest study. And so they're fearful about lung cancer. In the same context, they're fearful of tobacco smoking. So I think the whole anti-smoking campaign, which a lot of us think is terrific, has impacted marijuana smoking as well. Smoking itself has become stigmatized, and in and of itself is its own prohibition, and marijuana will fit right in there with it. So there's the lung cancer and there's smoking. And then, of course, and Paul Armentano and I have written about this, there's the issue of the adolescent brain and what marijuana does to the adolescent brain. And also, I want to add that it's not like alcohol these days is immune to all of this. If you're pouring your kid a drink or wine at dinner, you could be in serious, serious trouble for that too. So prohibition is kind of extending itself. So I think that's what's going on. I'm hopeful, as we all are, that in this next administration we are going to see a new day with the Obama administration. And I'm not naive enough to think that he's going to march in, even though this guy gets it. I know he gets it on this stuff. He's not going to march in and do exactly what we would hope he would do. It needs a little time. But I'm hopeful at least that the misinformation will cease to come out of the White House. That Obama will have people around him who will stop this stuff. And I'm really hopeful that also the horrible spread of random student drug testing and the misuse of funds to pay for random student drug testing will also go by the wayside. So I do have hopes about that, but I think parents right now are still very, very fearful, and it's in our best interest to help them to calm down, even as we're cautious about what we say about the use of marijuana among teenagers. We have to be really, really careful about that. So those are my parting words, and now I want to see what you have to say.
taking here because it strikes me as being incredibly middle class and naive, and that we have not been reading enough normal literature. I think that, and I include myself in this, by the way. I have a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old. My 20-year-old loved to straighten kids out on the facts on medical marijuana. And I was proud to hear her say that she overheard some kids saying, "Oh, don't go to Dr. Dierman for a recommendation. He makes you bring papers," meaning that they have to document their problem. I think that we need to recognize that, and we ignored that here, that we're in a culture war. And that, somebody said I couldn't explain why we have these laws, and that's because the laws are so absurd, and they're illogical. And until you realize that they're illogical, you can't explain it. And I've been working on a book for the last 8 years, so I'm kind of familiar with the illogic. And I'd like to hear people talk about the culture war and to talk about the fear that you talked about, because I juxtapose Roosevelt, who said there's nothing to fear but fear itself, and Bush, who said, be afraid, be very afraid, give me the tools to fight terrorism, the same tools we have to fight drug abuse. And I want to hear you talk about how we can be normal. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, who would like to respond to this?
I'm game.
Okay, Mitch.
Yeah. And we've seen it. We've seen this throughout history, and nobody knows it like you do, Dave. But the bottom line on this has been a tacit, interesting way to get at people who are not white, not male, and not rich. And America has been very creative in working around how this is going to go. And I don't have a ton of recommendations other than the stuff we get from the prejudice literature. How do we decrease prejudice in general? Get people to hang out with each other. Get people to notice the things that they have in common. Get people to realize that we're all in this together and more alike than we are different. God forbid we would do that with cannabis users as more and more of us come out and other people come and say, "Oh my goodness, I never knew," right? My mother-in-law says, "I don't know anybody who smokes marijuana," right? And then slowly but surely this seems to improve things. But that cultural difference goes all the way back to Anslinger, where in 1937 he says, marijuana makes black people think they're white. What black person wants to think he's white? And then that's really, you're absolutely, you're right on the money.